It's not about injury. It's not about injury. It's not about the injury. It's about the recovery. It's about the recovery.
Hi folks, Paul Padda coming to you on August 14th from Red Chimp Studios. We have a really special treat for you today. A guest I have a tremendous amount of admiration for, a really interesting person all the way around. Barbara Buckley, welcome to the Paul Padda podcast.
Thank you.
Nice
Glad
to
to
have
be
you.
here.
It's
Thank
really
you.
a pleasure. So, I know of your career as a lawyer. You've, how should I say this? You've been in a number of different spheres. You've been a politician. You've been a well-respected attorney, and now you're, again, back to being a very well-respected attorney. You were very well-respected as a politician, obviously, as well. You've had a really interesting career, and I think for a lot of people, people have heard your name. People probably don't know a lot about your background. Why don't you just tell our viewers a little bit about where are you a native of Vegas? If not, where did you come from? How long have you lived here? What do you love about Vegas?
Well, I was born and raised in Philadelphia, and I moved to Las Vegas when I was 19.
Okay.
My best friend, who I grew up with, moved to Vegas and had a baby.
Okay.
So I came to see the baby.
Uh-huh.
And I fell in love with Las Vegas. I looked at it. I saw the mountains on all sides.
It was a very different city back then.
Very different city, but very different than Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And I just felt this sense of hope here. In Philadelphia, you have bombed out neighborhoods.
Right.
You have beauty, but you have Vegas just had a different feel.
Yeah.
I fell in love with it right away.
Right.
And said, I'm going to move here. I'm going to live here.
It's funny you say that because I had that same experience. There's a feeling like you can accomplish almost anything here. The sky is the limit. The opportunities are as big as like the desert and the sky above us, right?
That is how I felt. And, in Philadelphia, you have to be so-and-so's councilman's son before you're seen for being who you are.
Yeah.
Right? And that wasn't here. I had trouble, though. I was, at the time, I was a legal secretary.
Okay.
And I had trouble getting hired by law firms, if you can imagine that.
No, I can't. Honestly, this is the weirdest thing. So sometimes it feels like the past, and it wasn't that long ago, what you're describing, it was another world. I read somewhere that Sandra Day O'Connor, after graduating first in her class at Stanford Law School, could not get a job as an attorney, so she had to go and become a legal secretary. It's nuts.
And I, who was a legal secretary, had trouble getting a legal secretary job, so I went to the Culinary Union and was sent out as a maid.
The Great Culinary Union.
The Great Culinary Union, which is why I have such a special place in my heart for them.
Sure.
And I went out, my first job was at the MGM as a maid.
Wow.
So I knew one person in town, had a job as a maid. Well, make a long story short, I did get a legal secretary job. And when I did, the attorney that I worked for said, why don't you become a lawyer? I never thought I could be a lawyer. I didn't know any lawyers, but he made me believe in myself. So I went to UNLV 4 nights a week, 4.5 years. Graduated and got a scholarship to the University of Arizona Law School.
Wow, that is really impressive.
I became a lawyer, 1989.
From working as a maid to legal secretary to putting yourself through undergrad and then going to law school at the University of Arizona.
Yes.
At night school.
And while I was there, I already knew, because I'd done some personal injury law. No offense, I didn't want to do that. I had worked for an insurance defense firm right before I worked for this attorney mentor of mine, Rich Myers.
Okay.
I knew I didn't want to do insurance defense law. And then I found out about this thing called legal aid. And I said, you know what? When I get out of law school, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. My first job out of law school was with legal aid, and 30 years later, I'm still there.
Now, how did you end up transitioning to politics? That's a whole nother story, I'm sure.
It's a whole other story. So I had been at legal aid for about 5 years, 6 years, and a landlord who I had sued for illegally locking people out, thousands of people that I'd filed a class action against.
Okay.
He went to the legislature.
Isn't that what personal injury attorneys do? So you're actually very good at it.
Well, yeah, he...
You brought a class action
I
on
brought a
behalf
class-
of these folks who had been sort of unfairly treated by this landlord, locked
Yes.
out. And then what was the result of that case?
Well, we filed for class certification, lost,
Okay.
did a writ to the Nevada Supreme Court, won.
Wow.
One of my first Nevada Supreme Court victories.
Okay.
So the class was certified, and then discovery continued. Think big bankers, boxes full of documents. This is before the digital age.
Right.
But ultimately, a number of things happened in the litigation,
Okay.
and it was successfully resolved.
And did that pique your interest in politics, or perhaps trying to make a bigger difference?
Well, what happened in the middle of the case was the landlord, I think, felt he was going to lose. So he tried to change the eviction law time from 5 days, one of the fastest in the nation, to 2 days.
Wow.
And to allow eviction notices to be served by mail. And I thought, who on earth could vote for such a horrible bill?
Yeah.
And the bill passed the assembly. So they said, Barbara, come up and testify in the Senate. And it was, I went up and I met great people who were really concerned about the concerns I was bringing up, and then people who wouldn't give me the time of day because I wasn't representing a rich lobbyist.
Yeah.
And the bill passed by 1 vote.
Wow. That's crazy.
And I came back, I was so disappointed and disillusioned. And my boss at the time said, well, what are you going to do now? And I'm like, well, we lost. And he said, well, why don't you try to get the governor to veto it? I'm like, the governor's, what's the chances of that?
Yeah.
And he said, well, why would you work so hard for this and care so much and not try? Okay, yes.
Great advice,
Great life advice. So I did. I called everybody in the world that I knew that might know the governor. Governor was Catholic. I called Catholic Charities. You name it. I did my homework at the culinary union call.
Right.
And the governor vetoed the bill.
Wow. That's great.
And that was my introduction in politics.
And let that be a lesson. One person can make a huge difference. Sometimes as
Yes.
citizens, we just feel kind of like, what's the point of even voting? I've had people tell me, well, I haven't even voted because what's the point? My vote's not going to count.
Yes.
But we've seen presidential elections come down to like 70,000 voters. That's incredible.
Absolutely.
So one person can make a huge difference. Your life is an example of that. It's amazing.
One person can make a difference. And I think the other thing that's really important to me is the importance of mentorship.
Yeah.
I never thought I could be a lawyer. I never met a lawyer. I
Yeah.
grew up lower middle class. I never thought I could be a legislator.
Yeah.
But I met a legislator then who said, you could do this. Have you
Yeah.
ever thought of it?
Yeah.
And because of those seeds being planted, I ran, I won.
Yeah.
I served 16 years,
That's
and I
right.
became the first female speaker
That's
in the
amazing.
state of Nevada's history.
That's incredible. So you were the majority leader of the state senate.
Assembly.
Assembly.
The
okay.
People's House.
The People's House. Yes, that's right.
Yes. My friends who are senators won't appreciate that, but the better house. Yeah.
And what made you decide to transition out of politics into running the Legal Aid Center?
Well, the interesting thing is I never left.
Okay.
I had both jobs all
Okay.
all that time, and I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
But because we're a part-time legislator,
right, yeah.
legislature,
Sure.
I did both. I
Okay.
would go on an unpaid leave of absence for 4 months.
Yeah.
But for those 16 years, I held both jobs. So I've been with legal aid 30 years.
30 years, okay.
And a subset of that was the 16 years with the legislature.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you know what? I remember driving downtown. I used to work at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I saw this beautiful building, and it had the Legal Aid Center sign on it. And I thought, wow, what an amazing building! It looks like better than some law firms.
Yes.
And the first thing that struck me was, symbolism is so important. People who walk through those doors, who are challenged, they don't have the resources. Maybe they're just down on their luck. They're great people. They're intimidated by the court system. I mean, lawyers go to court and we're nervous.
Yeah.
Imagine now having no legal training and having to go in and defend yourself. I feel people should walk through the doors of a place and feel immediately confident that, like, I'm going to get good representation. So I'm thinking that was an amazing thing what you folks did there and building the Legal Aid Center the way it is. It's really a beautiful building.
I think it's so important that people have trust in their lawyers,
Yeah.
right? And lawyers don't have a great reputation,
No,
despite
they don't.
the
I'm sorry,
fact
yeah.
that there's some terrific ones.
Sure.
But of course, there's also some not so terrific ones.
Correct. That's right.
So we really wanted the public to see the support we have and to see the tremendous lawyers we've been able to hire, lawyers that really want to make a difference and who are some of the best,
Yeah.
and to have them have confidence
Yeah.
and to feel, safe in our environment. And what we really try with each one of our clients or those that come to us is to give them the straight story.
Yeah.
People need
The truth.
the truth.
Yeah.
What the law says, what their chances might be, and that's what we try to provide people.
Yeah.
But there's so many people out there who can't afford an attorney,
Right.
and while in personal injury, they can go to a great personal injury lawyer, and if they have a good case, the lawyer will take the recovery out of
That's
their fee out
Exactly.
of the recovery.
Yeah.
That isn't true
Right.
if you have a payday loan.
That's right.
If you're being garnished.
Yeah.
If you bought a vehicle and the engine fell out on
Yeah.
your drive home.
Yeah.
If you're facing fraud
Right.
or an everyday legal problem, you can't afford a lawyer.
No, you can't. That's
Anyone
right.
who's poor and even lower middle class, you just can't afford a lawyer.
That's right. That's right. And I've noticed it seems like legal aid has really kind of burst on the scene in the last 5 to 6 years. Is there a reason for that? Was it just a funding thing? Did more people in the community kind of discover and realize, hey, we need to get behind this organization? What is there a reason for that?
I think the tipping point might have been the economic crisis in '07.
Okay.
I mean, when that happened, everybody lost their jobs,
Yeah.
right?
Everybody could understand and feel the pain.
Yes. And so we started, of course, for the first time doing foreclosure.
Yeah.
We had never really had a need before. But everybody was in economic distress. And so the need for our services skyrocketed. And we began to attract more grants to help people in need.
Okay.
And then after we did that, we started the campaign for our building.
Yeah.
And that required us to go out into the philanthropic community,
Okay.
the gaming community,
Sure.
the business community, and tell them what we did. And a lot of people kind of knew who we were, but they didn't have the details. So we invited them down.
I see.
Meet our people, meet our clients.
Yeah.
And they got it.
Okay.
And then that got us some financial contributions to hire more. And then those lawyers went out. So it began to kind of create
grow.
a ripple effect.
Now, if someone's watching the show and they might be under the misimpression that, legal aid only gets support from really wealthy donors or people who have a lot of money, can a person just contribute even $25?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
how can they do that? Is there a website they can go to?
Yeah, we have a website. It's LACSN, Legal Aid Centers.
LACSN, yes.
LACSN.org
Okay.
/donate, or you'll see a donate in there. Yeah, we get contributions $10, $25,
That's
$100.
fantastic. Yeah.
Sometimes clients will give us money.
Right.
And that always touches us.
Yeah.
But honestly, it feels just as good to get a smaller contribution
Oh, yeah.
from someone because it makes you feel like you're making a difference.
That's right.
And people are recognizing
And people
you.
recognize it, exactly.
Yeah.
What if they wanted to just come down to the facility and drop off a check? Can they do that too?
Absolutely.
Okay, what's the address?
725 East Charleston.
725 East Charleston. Okay,
We'll
that's
say
pretty
Legal Aid Center, Southern Nevada,
Right.
on the side.
easy. Awesome.
And and people can contact me as well.
Okay.
Maybe if somebody wants to come by for a tour, see what we do.
I got the tour and I was super impressed. If you get a chance to do this, this is something that you really should take advantage of. It's really impressive what you have down there.
Well, and I think, the variety is what's
Yeah.
so remarkable.
Yes.
You'll go into one office and it will be an attorney who does nothing but represent victims of domestic violence.
Okay.
And they want to protect themselves and
Yeah.
their kids, but their car was set on fire last month. And so they're trying to get a protective order and an equal playing field in custody so they don't lose their kids.
Right.
And then you can go to the next lawyer, and they're helping a 90-year-old who just lost their wife,
Yeah.
whose stepdaughter is evicting them.
Right. And some people think that those things don't happen, but they happen every day, right? I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling. When I came over and I met with some of your lawyers, the stories they were telling me, I just thought, does this actually really happen? And it does, right? You can't even fathom.
Some of our stories, we collect for those cases that need more than just advice.
Yeah.
We'll collect the cases and then once a week decide what resources to provide.
Okay.
Is this someone who can just need a form for court?
Right.
No, this is someone who really needs an attorney. And our attorney staff isn't limitless.
Yeah, that's right, of course.
Even though we have more attorneys than ever and we have more volunteers than ever, there's 800,000 people who qualify for our services.
Legally, yeah.
So we decide, which ones can we help?
Yeah.
And it's sad, right?
is.
That's the hardest part of our
is.
jobs,
Yeah.
is deciding who will get that legal help.
It's really hard.
Really hard.
All right, well, we're going to transition to a segment of our show where we call Paul Padda's Pointers for Folks, where we just throw out some legal tips to people. We'll take a
Okay.
little break and we'll come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about legal aid and drill down in terms of what you do every day and
Okay.
the mission of the organization. All
Okay,
right,
great.
thank you. Hi, folks. Paul Padda of Paul Padda Law, Paul Padda for the people, with another great pointer. I often get asked, what's the purpose behind your theme? What does it mean? And the theme of our law firm is, it's not about the injury, it's about the recovery. And so we tried to come up with a way of describing really the entire panoply of things that we offer and what clients experience and capture that in the theme. And I think our theme for our law firm really does capture that. Of course, the injury is always important because the injury will dictate the kind of results you may get in the case, but it's not always just about the injury. But when they come see me, they want to know, what's my recovery going to look like? And you know what? Recovery means both physical recovery. Am I going to get the right medical care? Will I ever be back to normal where I was before? Am I going to get properly compensated financially for all the nonsense that I've had to go through? And then what about my emotional recovery? There's certain cases that have such an emotional impact. All of those things are things that we have to deal with as a law firm to make sure that our clients get the total recovery. At Paul Padda Law, that's what it's all about. We're dedicated to a complete and total recovery as much as possible for our clients. And so that's why our theme is, it's not about the injury, it's about the recovery. All right, folks, we're back with Barbara Buckley, a really awesome guest. I've learned so much about you that I didn't know about before, and I'm even more impressed by your background. What an amazing personal story. And what's equally amazing is what you've done in terms of transforming and taking Legal Aid Center to the next level. We were giving folks some information about where they can find legal aid online, and then even coming down and getting a tour. I took the tour and I was so super impressed, not only in terms of the facility and the resources that you are employing to help folks, but the people that work there. Any organization is only as good as its people.
Yep.
And the lawyers, starting with yourself at the top and your entire staff, the lawyers, the secretaries, the paralegals, just an amazing group of people who are really passionate about what they do.
Yep.
When I used to be a prosecutor at the Department of Justice, we would always be told the Attorney General would issue a letter and he'd talk about how much pride you should take in being a prosecutor or part of the DOJ. This is the people's law firm. But I actually believe Legal Aid Center is the real people's law firm. I mean, you're dealing with folks who just have monumental issues that they have to deal with that may seem very mundane to the average person, or maybe not so, but imagine, like some of the stories you've told me of someone who is an elderly person who's being exploited by a relative, or being evicted and being 90 years old and not knowing where to go, and having that person show up and saying, can you help me? I just can't even imagine. That number one, maybe it's my naivete that these things don't happen. They do, obviously. And the juveniles that you deal with. I was so inspired by that speech you gave at the Clark County Bar. It kind of motivated me to want to introspect a little bit and say, you know what, making money is great, but what am I really doing to give back? And it kind of motivated me to want to get involved. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but just give folks an overview of the Legal Aid Center. What exactly do you do on a day-to-day basis?
So, our mission is to provide legal information, advice, representation for people that can't afford an attorney in the civil cases.
Yeah.
So civil is basically anything that's not criminal, and the irony is, right, if you're accused of a crime, you're entitled to an attorney.
Right.
But what if you're an abused and neglected kid in the foster care system and you're being separated from your brother or sister?
Yeah.
And you feel like you're losing a limb.
Right.
and you want to speak up, who's there for you?
And you walk into a courtroom and there's someone sitting on a dais with a robe. I mean, and judges are well-intentioned, but the atmosphere can be extremely intimidating to an average person.
Yes. And so one of our important projects is our Children's Attorneys Project,
Right.
where we provide representation to kids in the foster care system.
Okay.
And so we're currently representing 3,500 children.
Wow.
That
3,500
program,
kids.
yeah, that program started 20 years ago.
Okay.
I got one grant to hire one attorney to take one case.
Jeez.
And over the last 20 years, we have built it into the most amazing office. And just last week, I got notice that we won a national award. It is the inaugural Best Children's Law Office
Wow.
from the National Association of Counsel for Children.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
thank you.
A
We're
lot to
thrilled.
be proud of.
Yeah. So, you know, they fight for these kids, right? Because government has a lawyer, the abusive parent, accused abusive parent has a lawyer.
Yeah.
But what about the kid? They're the most
Yeah.
important person involved in the case.
Sure.
What about what they want?
Right.
So our lawyers establish a relationship of trust with the child. Then we advocate for what they want, so their voices are heard.
I see.
And it can be everything from they would like to be in a place near their school so they don't have to switch schools. Or it could be they want to be with mom or they want to be with grandma. And then if that can't happen, right, their parent has to do some things before they can get their child back, we'll be straight with them.
Yeah.
We'll say, hey, look, mom has some issues. The judge is going to want to see X, Y, and Z first.
Okay.
We're going to advocate for that, but what's your plan B?
Right.
Where would you like to be in the meantime? So we're counselors at law.
Sure.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. That's right.
So that is one huge project, but that's just one of many.
That's one of many. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a foreclosure section too, right? That helps folks with that.
It's part of our consumer rights project,
Okay.
and that can be everything from garnishment.
Yeah.
We do a lot of work with people with payday and title loans.
Oh yeah, I
to
see that
keep-
in my practice too. People coming in with
Yep.
these loans that they've taken.
Yep.
And it's just unbelievable.
They're about to lose their car.
Yeah.
We have so much success with those cases. So if you know anyone, send them
Okay.
our way.
I will.
Because we were able to pass some statutes to say you got to give
Yeah.
a repayment plan,
Yeah.
and if they don't, you don't have to pay the loan back.
Right.
So we know the ins and outs of this industry, kind
Yeah.
of like you with the insurance industry.
Oh yeah. You see so much unfairness and how the system is set up
Yeah.
against people.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with making money. There's nothing
Right.
wrong with being a business owner.
Right.
But there has to be guardrails, and there has to be some element of fairness in the process, right? And laws
Absolutely.
often get just passed based on special interests and who has the most money for the lobbyists
Yes.
to push an agenda through, and that's what
Yes.
inspired you to get into politics.
Well, that's right. It wouldn't bother us if somebody paid $30, $50 to borrow $300.
Yeah.
It's when they borrow $1,000 and pay back thousands.
That's crazy.
And are still in debt.
Right.
Or they're about to lose that car, which
Yeah.
means they're going to lose the job next. And they've already more than paid double the amount they
Yeah.
borrowed. That's what makes our blood boil.
Yeah. So legal aid is funded through grants.
Grants.
And then private donations. Correct?
Private donations, yes. We also get a little bit from, when someone files a lawsuit,
Yeah.
we'll get a little bit of that,
Oh,
of
okay.
that fee
I
that
see.
you pay to the
Sure.
court.
Okay. Good.
Because we're so close to the courts.
So if you're a lawyer, file more lawsuits. That's the lesson I'm taking.
Okay, I'm not going to go that far, but it does help us out.
Okay.
The other thing is we have very close partnerships with the courts.
Yeah.
The courts pay us to run self-help centers in the courthouses.
You have created the best self-help center. Honestly, I've seen lawyers plagiarize your forms. They're that good.
Yes,
They're amazing.
They are.
Yeah.
So we've created through our lawyers that run both centers
Okay.
over 500 fill-in-the-blank forms.
Wow.
Including some PDF fillable. And now we're working on guide and file where you just answer questions and then the forms are automatically populated.
So let's say someone doesn't qualify for the services that legal aid provides, but they're kind of lost in terms of how to navigate the system. They can go down to the courthouse and there's a actual self-help center where all your forms are available. Is that correct?
That is right.
Yeah.
And our staff at Legal Aid Center works in those centers.
Okay.
So the court provides us the funding.
So here in Clark County, that would be the Clark County Courthouse, I think
Yes.
at 200 Lewis.
200 Lewis. And as
Yeah.
soon as you walk in, you see civil help,
Great.
self-help.
Yeah.
So that is a good center if you're being evicted, if you're being sued by a credit card company, if
Yeah.
you have a TPO that you need to file against a neighbor, a protective order, civil cases. And then there's another one in the family court
Okay.
that is for people with family law problems, divorce,
Sure.
custody.
Yeah.
And each one of those centers see 50,000 people a year.
It's amazing.
We call them our legal emergency rooms.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. Hi,
Right.
I'm being evicted. What do I do?
Right.
We say, okay, let us help you. Okay, next,
Or
it is.
split up with my spouse and he has a child, or how
What
do
do I do?
Yeah, what
How do I
do?
navigate it?
Yeah.
And that's what those centers are for.
Right.
And then we also augment that with our free legal classes that are taught by amazing students from Boyd School of Law, and we supervise them, or
Yeah.
a Boyd instructor supervises them. So the self-help centers, the classes, and then we have Ask a Lawyer programs in lots of different areas, and all of those are available to people regardless of income.
I see.
So if you're middle class, you
Yeah.
can't pay for a lawyer, but you need information, those are the places to go.
And frankly, $5,000 to $10,000 to pay a lawyer is not considered a lot in the legal profession.
Right.
But for the average person, $5,000 to $10,000 is a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
And
it really is.
sometimes the matter at hand isn't worth the $5,000 or $10,000.
That's right.
what's even.
Yeah.
I mean, if it is worth it, meaning
Sure.
you have $200,000 at stake,
Yeah.
it might be worth it. But if you have a small claims court matter,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can go to a free small claims court class. You can go to the Self-Help Center website.
That's
All
true.
the forms are there, and that's a better way to go.
And now, obviously, here in Clark County, we have a large Spanish-speaking population.
Yeah.
From all over the world.
Yeah.
How does Legal Aid deal with that? Do you have folks on staff, both in terms of support personnel and attorneys that are Spanish speakers?
We do, and especially our support personnel. I think we have about 5-6 lawyers that speak Spanish as well.
Okay.
But we have to be,
Yeah, of
just to be
course.
able to serve the community's
your
needs.
clientele, yeah.
It's our clientele.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And what about the forms? Are they available in Spanish as well?
Because the courts require the forms to be completed in English, we're getting more and more, beginning to turn to getting more and more guides in Spanish and in both languages. But the court forms are required to be
That's
done
true,
in
yeah.
English.
Now, but if someone walked into the civil self-help center in the courthouse and they said, look, I'm not fluent or very conversant in English, I need to help filling this form out, would there be someone there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's we have to
Yeah.
have staff.
Yeah.
About I
bilingual.
think about 55% of our staff are bilingual.
Wow.
Trilingual.
That's great.
Different languages.
Yeah.
Hispanic community, Asian community.
Sure.
I mean, we're a multicultural city,
That's
so
right,
we try to be there for everyone.
All right, well, now I want to talk a little bit about the people that you have working there because, so just by way of background, I got involved with Legal Aid recently supporting the Community Justice Fellowship,
Yes.
which is, and I'm just one person who supports Legal Aid, but it just struck me as really a way to get involved with this wonderful organization. But one of the things that really motivated me to do that was, number one, I heard you speak at the Clark County Bar, and I kind of introspected and thought a lot about, what can I do in terms of giving back? And especially here's an organization that's in my own profession.
Yes.
That's serving people, and I can see, and I know the tangible effects that good legal representation can have on someone's life. And then I came over and I met a lot of your staff and the attorneys, and I have to tell you, I'm so blown away by the quality and the credentials and the attitude of the people that you have working for you. Amazing folks. You said this comparison between Legal Aid and the Public Defender's Office. The Public Defender, of course, deals with criminal issues, and essentially you are like the Public Defender equivalent on the civil side. And I would get people who'd come in and talk to me about, well, should I hire a federal public defender? And I think there's a perception out there that if a person works for the Public Defender's Office, it's government assisted.
Right.
Therefore, the quality of lawyers can't be great.
Right.
And they're so wrong.
Yeah.
Some of the best lawyers in this city work for the federal public defender and the Clark County public defender. Really well-credentialed folks, people with a lot of jury trial experience. Richard Bulware, a federal judge. He has an amazing background, Harvard and Columbia, and a very good lawyer.
And Brenda Wexler,
our
newest magistrate judge,
she's got a
yesterday.
great background, exactly. So they really have, in my opinion, some of the absolute best lawyers in the city. And I see that with legal aid. I had a chance to chat with some of the folks who work there, and I was blown away. Like someone who left a large firm who was a patent lawyer to come work for legal aid because they said, I want to make a difference.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds corny. We all went to law school thinking that we want to make a difference in people's lives. I think law is not a path to extreme wealth. You go to business school if you want to start a company or be an entrepreneur. This is a profession where we try to make a difference and give back and be an advocate. But I think what you're doing is really the embodiment of that. But how do you continue to attract such high quality people? That's what's really impressive to me.
Well, one thing is we don't hire any attorney if we feel like they just want a job.
Yeah.
Right? We'll leave the position vacant.
It's not a job, it's a calling, right?
It's a calling.
Yeah.
So you have to really impress us in the interview and in your life story.
Yeah.
And, you know, once we began hiring kind of the best of the best, then it attracted more people. We get a lot of folks who, they became a partner in a law firm.
Yeah.
And they were at the top of their game and they're making a lot of money and they're doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't do it one more day. And so with legal aid, they get to create, how do we create a self-help center?
Yeah.
It's never been done before.
That's right.
Or like the county just asked us to take over the Vegas Strong Resiliency Center, serving the victims and survivors of October 1, who still have legal issues, can't get back to work. How are they going? You know, they have all these issues. And we get to create it. How can it be the best model center in the country?
Right.
And so then you get people that say, I'd love that challenge. I'd love that opportunity to help people.
Yeah.
And so then, it just begins to snowball.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have some incredibly talented people who I would trust with anything for me. Much more than I would any other lawyer in the community.
Well,
Present company accepted, of course.
I know the pressures of running a law firm, and I'm just a 19-person law firm.
Yeah.
But how much staff and lawyers do you have total at Legal Aid?
So we have 66 lawyers.
Wow.
And 130 staff.
You've got to be like the largest law firm in the state, I would think, or close to it.
Well, you have the DA, AG,
well, that's
public
true.
defender that are larger, but it's large, right? And in 2007, we had 21 lawyers.
Jeez.
So that just, we've tripled in the last 12
a little
years.
bit more than a decade.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, this has been a wonderful conversation. I could continue on for another hour. I hope you will definitely come back.
We got to talk about the fellowship,
I know. All right. Well, let's talk about that just for a little bit. Can you, I got involved recently with this Community Justice Fellowship, which was a great name that you came up with. Can you tell folks what this is about?
So it is an incredible opportunity and fills such a need in our organization. So as I mentioned before, we've made such strides, but there's 800,000 people that need our help.
Yeah.
And every day we're trying to decide, do I help the 90-year-old being evicted or the domestic violence victim? It's tough.
Yeah.
So one of our biggest needs is more staff to help. And one of the other things we want to do is make sure we continue to attract lawyers, especially from historically underrepresented populations, so that the community feels like, wow, here's someone that
looks like me and kind of understands where I'm coming from.
So with this incredible fellowship opportunity, we're not just going to hire a law student, but we're going to hire someone who just graduated from law school, a new lawyer.
Good.
And it's sponsored by you, and we're incredibly grateful. And so this lawyer is going to work in each one of our critical departments with children, with victims of domestic violence, with consumers.
That's awesome.
And we hope it'll turn out to be our pipeline for our next generation of legal aid lawyers.
Absolutely.
Who will come in well-trained, and inspired to do justice.
I've already had people reach out to me and say, I just heard about this thing you're involved with, because they saw it on LinkedIn or Facebook, and they're like, how can I help get involved? And what can I do to help support it? I said, well, there's a lot you can do.
Great.
But this is a great opportunity for a young lawyer, a well-credentialed attorney from a diverse background to come in and really get the kind of cross-sectional training that you provide in a number of different areas.
Absolutely. And maybe an edge up on the next opening,
there
right?
You go. That's
or
right.
to be, if they choose to move on, be a leader for legal aid and access to justice on the judiciary.
That's right.
Or as a bar leader.
Yeah.
Or doing pro bono work with us, because we have lawyers, an incredible stable who do pro bono with us. But we have 100 cases on our waiting list right now.
That's right.
So.
Well, Barbara, we've run out of time.
Okay.
But listen, thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely.
Once again, if folks want to learn more about legal aid, where can they find you on the web?
LACSN.org.
Awesome. And if they want to come down and get a tour, they can come down to
725 East Charleston.
Fantastic.
Thank
you so
you.
much for being on the show. I want to definitely have you back maybe in a couple of months, and we can talk more about the fellowship and kind of get an update on where things are going. And there's so much we could talk about. But thank you so much for coming on this show.
Thank you.
Folks, that's a wrap for another show here at the Paul Padda Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us with our fantastic guest. Until next time, take care.
It's not about